Need something, Joshua. Did you get your donut?
I might be able to help.
I'm all right.
Alright.
All right, so what is your full name? Why did your parents select this name for you? And were you named after anybody? Pop?
I was named my middle name after my uncle Edward.
Okay.
Robert, I'm not sure where that just came from. I don't remember any Roberts.
All right.
I was just named Rita. Somebody picked that out.
Maybe because it was Saint Rita.
No, I don't know. They didn't get into that in the day. It was Rita.
Right.
And I chose Ann as my middle name because my aunt stood for me.
Okay. Did you have a nickname? And if you did, what were you called?
No nickname.
I had a nickname when I was in school, but I don't remember what it was. They all called me some little name. It was a special name. Somebody started it, and then first thing it spread around to everybody.
I can't remember.
And I don't remember what that nickname was.
That's all right. Did you have any nicknames as an adult at work?
Well, I have a nickname. She calls me German.
I do.
Okay.
When he's mean, I call him. You
At
know.
work, I didn't have any.
That's not nice, but that's the war was all
That's-
Germans we were fighting.
That's a common
so
thing I've heard
I said
is
it.
that a lot of nicknames were about your ethnicity and things like that
But
as
and
well.
you're influenced by the war.
Yeah.
Because we were growing up then, so.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Wilmington, St. Francis Hospital.
I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, Maple Heights, 1929.
1929. And Grandma, what year were you born?
1932.
1932. Did you have any siblings?
I didn't, but somebody else does. Did.
I have two sisters.
Okay. What are their
One
names?
older than me, which has passed away, and then I have her name was Jean, and then I had Muriel.
It's his youngest sister.
Your youngest sister?
She's
Okay.
about
Okay. What were the names of your parents?
Oh, Antoinette and Adam.
mine was John Eugene Trimmer and Eleanor Hildegard.
Okay. And how did your parents come to live where you were born?
My father came from Italy to help his mother because his father had died. And she got all the papers from the mayor and everything that he would need to get to this country. Because he was going to get some money to help her survive. And he did that. He didn't know anything. God bless him. Came over and did that.
Came with nothing, pretty much. Yep.
My dad worked for DuPont when he was 14 years old, and he stayed there until DuPont bought Griselli Chemicals. That's where he worked, Griselli Chemicals, and then came to Delaware.
Okay.
I was 7 years old.
Were there other family members in your area that you grew up in, Pop?
No.
No? And obviously there were no family members in your area where you grew up in, right, Grandma?
And you mean from,
Here.
yeah, no,
They were the first ones over.
well, my
Talking about
grandmother-
being in Delaware?
No, in Ohio where you were
Cleveland,
born.
I had all the family.
All the family was in,
And my
in
dad came
Cleveland?
from a large family.
Okay.
and my family was all from the Wilmington area.
Right.
My grandparents.
Okay.
And you want to say Grandpa went back to Italy like 3 times.
Well, yes, well, my dad came here, his father died, so his mother got all the papers together that he would need to get here to help her out, because she wanted to stay on the farm that they had. And so she had all the papers prepared. He came here, and then he was successful in getting her money, did things for her. But he didn't want to stay back in Italy any longer.
Right.
She was not happy about that.
Right, but
So-
he came here and went back to Italy 3 times.
Yeah, he did go back and see if she was all right or what she needed. He was good that way, but he did not want to stay there. She was very, very unhappy with him. But he was very happy here.
Right.
God, I'm like, so here we're all here because of him.
Right. Yep. What was the house or the apartment or the farm like that you grew up in? How many rooms did it have? Bathrooms? Did it have electricity? Indoor plumbing? Were there telephones?
And when I can remember back, we were almost living in a granary, which people say couldn't be, but it didn't have electricity, it didn't have bathrooms, you had outside toilets.
Right.
That's the only thing I could really remember.
Right. So we're talking back to in the 30s.
When I was an infant.
In the 30s, when growing up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I was about 7. My parents bought this property, 3 acres, and no one was really around here. The farmer over here owned all the fields.
Mm-hmm.
And they managed to build a house, get a house built here, but the war had started, and they were having a hard time getting this house finished being built because it wasn't a necessity.
Right.
So we somehow managed bits and parts get done, and we finally moved here.
Okay. Were there any special items in the house that you remember? Any special items to your family that was important?
I can't really remember anything because we didn't have too much. My parents were very poor when they got married. That's why they were living the way they were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I really don't remember anything.
All right.
I think everybody struggled. It was a struggle, especially during the war coming on. Everybody had to make do with what you could get.
Yep.
Because at one point it was pretty bad. I mean, if you had coupons for meat or food, you had to find somebody who was going to trade with you or take that because it was very difficult. It got pretty bad there for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Pop, this question's more for you. Growing up, what was it like with your sisters around? Did they torment you, or did you torment them?
I used to tease my older sister a lot. We did a lot of fighting and arguing and that. But Muriel, the younger sister, I didn't get too involved with her because she had her own little ways.
Mm-hmm.
She was a lot younger also.
My older sister and I, we got along good. As I got older, I used to go over to the house, and we had rabbits. We were raising rabbits at their house, so did okay. I was a little disappointed when she moved away, though.
Sure. What kind of games did you play growing up?
Games.
Did you play board games? Obviously, no video games.
I think you're lucky if you got a checkerboard set or something
Mhm.
like that because it was very poor as far as.
The one that we played back in our days was 3 tin cans. You set the 3 tin cans up and everybody goes and hides.
Right.
Kids don't play that today.
No.
But that was one of the main games other than hide and seek.
Okay.
What do you call it? Skip, hop, I see, I spy, and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
No television those days.
Obviously. Yeah.
Mom played desk secretary.
Oh,
Pop built you the desk.
Right.
Oh, a desk? Yeah.
A lot of imagination, obviously. Yeah. School.
Wasn't much going on when the war was here.
Do you remember a favorite toy growing up as a kid? Anything that you really liked or cherished?
The only thing I can really remember is my parents bought us a 3-wheel bicycle. And I only had my older sister at that time. And I wanted it when she wanted it. So it didn't work out to have a bicycle to share.
Right. Right. As a teenager, what were your favorite things to do? Did you ever go to the movies?
If you could walk from here to up the Cedars, which is quite a long walk, and you could get a bus to take you to the movies, during the war particularly.
And how much was it to buy a ticket?
Well, it wasn't very much.
Nickel on it.
Yeah, 10 cents or something like that. But you had to do a lot of walking to catch the bus to get in town. But I did it, so by myself. Because remember, young girl, little girl, almost not too old, on this road.
Yeah.
I think about it now, it kind of gives me the goosies.
It's a little different now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I used to work at the Crest Theater, which is now a church, I guess. And I used to work out there putting the signs up So I had free movies when I was a teenager, and one free pass.
Okay.
Well, you were on the ball about it.
What about your family chores? Did you have family chores? What were they?
Most of our tours were going over to Pennsylvania to a place called Lafferty's. They had a lake there, and they had a little cabin, and no electricity. It was like living outdoors. I remember doing that as a kid. My parents would go there and spend almost every weekend.
Yep. What? But chores, Pop. As a kid growing up, did you have to clean the bathroom?
My sister and I used to do the dishes until finally I revolted and said, "How come I have to do these dishes?" Because I thought I was getting too old to do dishes.
Uh-huh.
So that was the only time I sort of did have a revolt, but that stopped doing dishes. I do outdoor work.
No, and in my case, yes, you had to help with helping in the kitchen.
Right.
Definitely.
You kind of chuckled earlier when I asked about receiving an allowance. Obviously, there was no allowance. You had jobs that you had to do no matter what.
Would you believe, yeah, I would go to the lady way up the street here and babysit for her, and she'd give me a little bit of money, and that would be considered something I could spend if I was able to get to a movie or something.
Right. Right. Do you remember any fads as a kid, as a youth? Popular hairstyles, popular things that people had?
Joshua, the war was on, and we weren't getting much of anything. And it was very scary in a way. Right. Because at one point, there wasn't anything available for the locals. It was all going toward the war effort. Yep. So we did grow up in that.
Did you have any childhood heroes?
Did you?
Look up in the sky. It's a bird, it's a plane. You know who that is.
Yeah.
That was my sort of hero, other than other things that you heard on the radio, because there was no TV. You had to imagine all these things.
Right.
Your imagination could do a lot for you.
Sure. Yeah. Songs or music? Did you listen to songs or music growing up?
Well, I talked my parents into buying a used piano. That's all you could get. And it's a big thing, just about fit in the room. And I went to piano lessons. Now, from here to way up to the intersection, that's where I had to walk to go to the teacher who was teaching me in her home. And then I had to walk home from the lesson. So that tells you how much I didn't want to learn how to play piano. I entertained myself for a few years. Yeah. Nothing to do out here, so that was good.
My mom especially had records of songs, and that's where I learned most of my songs, old ones, really old ones. Yeah, because she played them over and over and over. A little wind-up record player.
Okay.
Well,
old style.
That was old.
Yeah. Growing up, did you have any pets?
I like to have pets. I had all kinds of pets. My mom let me. I used to raise rabbits, in fact, when I was a kid. I had them out in the garage. Okay. I don't know whether to call them pets because
don't say it.
I would sell them.
Right.
What was you had a dog, remember the dog?
I had a couple collie shepherds, I think they were called, as pets. Okay. They were very nice dogs. They were an outside dog. Right. They were allowed in the house.
We had Labrador Retriever, Laddie, and he stayed with us quite a long time. He was our pet dog. He was outside, but he wasn't allowed in the house. They didn't do that in the day, but he was a dog that I had to run around with.
What do you want to add in?
Well, he had his favorite dog. That's the one I'm talking about that got hit by the train.
Yeah, that was one of the collie shepherds.
Yeah,
I was fishing. There was a railroad track there, and I had the dog with me. And I heard the train coming, and I called the dog. That was the wrong thing to do. That ended the dog.
Yeah. Growing up, was your family religious? Did they attend church?
I went on my own pretty much as soon as I got a little bit older. No, I think she just knew that for a while we lived right down the street from St. Anthony's Church when I was younger. And then when we came out here, where was the church?
Right.
There's many around here, so it's pretty difficult to attend church.
Was there
Especially
any-
during the war? There's no way to use gas for that.
So, your parents had no religion
Well, they
affiliation?
did. They always thought of their stuff as religious. It wasn't that, but there was during the war. Everything was so mixed
Right.
up, and it was sort of it was scary at times when it got bad.
Mm-hmm.
You have to remember they had times when the sirens went on, and we had to take cover and stuff like that. Do you remember that, Bob? We did have that here. I recall, and just as a young child, it was scary.
Yeah.
I was Episcopalian with my mother. My dad didn't have much of as far as religious, but Mom and I would go church pretty much regular until I got older, then it stopped.
Okay.
Then you met your wife and you turned Catholic.
Yeah, then I turned Catholic when I was in the service.
Yeah. All right. Growing up, what was your family dinner like? Did you eat together as a family? Who did the cooking? What were your favorite foods? And this is still as a child living with your parents. Do you remember
I still cook.
who cooked? You cooked
Yeah,
still?
well, my mother would go work up the street here. They had mushroom farms, and she would go up there and clean the mushrooms that they would sell. That's how she made some extra money. A lot of women did that, and then it would be my job to kind of put something together for dinner, whether I peeled potatoes or did something of that nature. Yeah, help her out. So they would pretty much walk up there. It's far.
And did you eat together as a family every night?
Yeah, my dad liked that. It's just the three of us, so it was about it because there was nothing else going on.
Right.
You didn't even have television or anything in those days.
Right. And Pop, who did the cooking at your house?
My mom, my dad didn't do any cooking at all. But
He worked
my younger sister never ate with us. I don't know why. She had her own little table.
Okay.
She always sat, Muriel, she always sat at the table. There's one little table in the corner. That I thought was sort of strange.
Was that her choice or was that your parents' choice?
That was, I think, her choice.
Okay.
But my older sister, Jean, we sat at the table and we were taught to eat everything we saw,
Yeah.
whether we liked it or not. My dad used to hit me with a fork if my hands are on the table. In other words, you don't rest your hands on the table.
Uh-huh.
And then he'd eat with a fork.
What were your holidays like? Birthdays, Christmas? Were they celebrated as a family? Did you have any special traditions?
You can see now here with just me. That was it. It's really
Yeah.
Mom,
super quiet.
Aunt Rose and them.
Huh?
Aunt Rose.
My Aunt Rose was a wonderful aunt. She lived up here the road, and she would always do something for us. For me, she would make cake or something. She was very good that way. Most of our family dinners would be my mom, dad, and me, which was just very low key.
Right.
And Aunt Rose would be kind enough to invite us sometimes to make it more of a holiday.
I remember Aunt Rose and Uncle Earl.
God
A
bless you.
little bit of them had grown up as a kid.
Wow,
So
that's great, Joshua.
yeah. The
I'm
Masons,
proud
I
of you.
believe, was their last name. Mason.
Yeah, that's very, very good.
Vague memory in my
Wow,
head,
it's
but I do
very
remember.
good, yeah.
And I remember the house right up the road
Yeah,
here. Every
right,
now and
exactly.
then, when we drive by it, I say that was Aunt Rose, Uncle Earl's house.
That's
Yeah.
nice that you remember
But
that.
she also had an Aunt Mary who died young.
Yeah,
and
Aunt
she was
Mary.
really good too.
Yeah, it was Randy's mom, and she did die young. It was very difficult to accept that because she was a treasure, and she was very, very good to me. She was a seamstress, and she would sew things for me.
Okay.
Big whole of my life.
She would make you things.
I-
What did you do during summer vacations? All right, when you were small, who did you visit? Where did you stay? Summer vacations, Pop.
Well, as a kid, we always went to Keowee. We had this little cabin my parents rented. They had a little lake down there, and that was vacations as well as weekends. It
Right.
was only half-hour ride from here, but that was the big thing. And there was no electric there.
Right, and you go fishing there.
My dad and I would fish without a fishing license. Of course, I didn't need one, but my dad was supposed to have one.
Right.
So we had a lot of fun there back in those days.
And Grandma, what'd you do? Summer vacations? Did you go
Well,
anywhere?
I had a great aunt who would go and rent a place at the Wildwood or something like that.
See,
And Wildwood also, but she would always include me with her family, which was wonderful. Cause I didn't. Certainly, my mom and dad are not going to go to the beach.
Yeah.
So she was so good to me. It made my life a lot better.
One more question under your childhood memories. What world events had the most impact on you growing up? And did any of them personally affect your family? You had mentioned the war several
Definitely.
times.
For me, that was frightening. I can remember how frightened we were because we didn't know if we were going to get bombed or something. So it was very scary.
And are we're talking about World War II?
Too, right.
I was in the theater when they announced the war, and that was my biggest impact to announce that. It was when Theodore Roosevelt, I guess, was president.
So what happened in the theater? I mean,
Well,
was the
they
movie?
shut the screen off, and they announced that the United States had declared war on Germany,
Wow.
Japan. And I probably was 14 years old at that time.
Do you remember what movie you were seeing? No.
It was in black and white.
Yeah, they're always black and white.
But you remember that theater being shut off
Yeah.
and the announcement happening.
Yeah.
Did people panic?
No.
No.
No, it was a hush really everywhere you went. Everybody was concerned because it was frightening, really. We didn't know if we'd get bombed. That
Right.
was the answer
Well,
there.
remember what you told me? You had the lights on and the
Oh, they'd come to the door. If you had lights on here or where we were.
Oh, that was air raid.
Yeah.
they
Air
told
raid
me that.
practice.
Sirens would go off. No lights permitted at all. It was dense, dark out here.
But you had a
especially
light
country.
on, a small light, and he could see it. Remember?
Yeah, he did.
My biggest worry when I was at that age was the DuPont building getting bombed, because that was the largest building in Delaware at that time. And that's where my dad worked.
Right.
It always bothered me that he was in there and it could have been bombed.
All right. The next section is titled School Days. What was school like for you as a child?
Very meager because from this house here, it had to walk down the Limestone Road as a not quite 10-year-old child and wait for a bus, whatever weather, and ride into the Stanton area where our school was. It was like 2 classes of children in one room. 8 over there, 8 over here, or
Right.
something of that nature.
Right.
Yeah, it was, the teachers were good and all that, but it was very, very old-fashioned, you know.
Yeah.
Good though.
I didn't do too well. I just got by. Rita was the one that did well in school, and I was told.
Right.
Did I tell
But I
you?
got by.
Now.
My sister didn't graduate,
Yeah,
Okay.
Jeannie did.
but I did.
Yeah.
I didn't graduate with any honors.
Right.
Not like my younger sister. She graduated at, what was it, shorthand in Middletown.
And I was in a lot of school plays. I had major parts in school plays at the time.
Mhm.
When I left there and I joined the group that had put together shows in Wilmington, and I was part of that for quite a while. I enjoyed it.
Pop, how did you get to school?
I walked. Most of the time, I don't think I ever had a bus. We were close enough that I could walk.
You could walk to school.
Yeah.
Did you have any favorite subjects in school?
Naturally, art would be mine.
Art, yeah.
It could have been his.
Well, I
as
did a
well.
lot of artwork
Yeah,
in
you did
school.
too.
In fact, I did a couple things for plays that they had in there. But other than that, my grades were C's.
Oops.
A in art.
A and R. As far as your education, you completed high school. Am I right saying that?
Yeah.
You did complete high school, and,
Yeah.
and Grandma, you completed high school?
Yes, and then I went to like a short-term school that would sort of press you more about business. So I went and I got a job with a lawyer almost just immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked for lawyers as a result.
Pop, did you do any continued education?
Well, I can remember in high school, I remember the principal coming around and looking at my report cards and wondering why I had all these A's in art and all the rest of the grades were average. He said, why can't the rest of your grades be like this? And I can remember that because it was rather embarrassing.
Sure.
To come around.
Sure. Grandma, do you have a college degree, or did you get a degree in your continued education?
Yeah, I just went to the business college school
Mhm.
in Wilmington and attended that, so I should sharpen my skills for I was going to work for lawyers, so that gave me a good
Right.
background to do
It was
that.
called Goldie Beacon back then.
Yeah,
Just
it was
still-
Goldie Beacon
Still
School.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what school activities or sports did you participate in? You said you did some plays.
I definitely had major part in plays, which I enjoyed very much, and but I was not a sports person. You would either like one thing or the other for me.
Right. And Pop, did you participate in any sports growing up?
Not very much. I was very small when I was in high school. I didn't grow until I got out of high school.
You did some baseball though.
I remember when I graduated from grammar school, they went by size, and I was the first one out because I was the smallest one.
It's amazing, his long legs.
I did a couple plays, I guess, where I sang on stage later on in grammar school, but for some reason, I like to talk about it.
Well, you were a catcher and
Oh, yeah, you were
I-
a sports.
I was a pitcher in hardball. We played hardball. That was when I was out of high school. I was actually working. I started work when I was 17,
Okay.
and we had our own little hardball team in Forest Brooklyn, Woodland Homes.
Okay. All right. The next section is called From First Dates to I Do's. How would you describe your spouse, and what do you admire most about them? Grandma, how do you describe Pop?
Well, we might have been at the same dance, I guess, at the time, and Mr. Good Looking looked like a movie star. So naturally, my eyes focused on him. I'll take him. And he hasn't changed a bit.
Yeah, sure.
You admired his good looks at first, huh?
Well, he was striking. I'm going to tell you that. He was very striking.
yeah.
Tall, thin. He had hair.
But it was thin.
How long have you been married now? What year did you get married? Do you remember?
I got married. I think it said out there in that sign, 1953.
53.
So I was married 66 years. Is that right, Karen?
Yeah. You figured that.
Forever.
Holy
Wait a
mackerel.
minute. Dad didn't answer what attracted.
Ho.
She was pretty.
Oh,
She's a pretty young lady.
well, tell him when I got picked.
Best looking girl in her class.
Uh-huh.
Aren't you proud of me?
Yes.
There, you got some genes there, you guys. Albeit got
She
some
was a
genes.
good looking woman in her day.
So you met at a high school dance.
Right.
Wow.
It may not even been a high school. It may have been a grammar school dance.
Okay.
I'm sure. Crib school.
Yeah, I was visiting with my girlfriend over there. And,
They had dances.
yeah, she was from
And,
that area.
There was an accident after the dance, which gave me the opportunity. I took her home. I didn't even have a car. I went with somebody else. But that was the beginning.
Okay.
That's
And
it. Here we are, 100 years later.
do you remember any of your other first dates or get-togethers?
This is my first date.
I know, but with
I
each
know,
other.
no,
With each other.
Oh, I don't know.
After that moment.
His parents had a place down at the Woodland Beach, and we used to.
Yeah.
They invited me be there with their family and all, which was very nice, and
They had the-
shared the time with them. Yeah, they were good to me.
Where was that? I can't remember.
Woodland Beach. I don't remember, but
No, I think it was Knoxontown Lake.
yeah, true.
They even tore the place down. And we would would go down there.
Hang out.
Well, the parents had a cottage, you might say, and then I'd be invited to be part
I
with
used to
them.
do a lot of fishing with my dad back in those days. A lot of fishing.
And so, Grandma, you'd go fishing with Pop?
No, I wouldn't because that wasn't my thing. But I enjoyed, it was a beautiful place to be, and as an artist, I would take in a lot of
Yeah.
views and things to use.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, it was something about both of us. It was like we knew each other forever. So I think when you meet someone and you don't have to analyze it or anything, and that was the way with
Yeah,
us.
well, we had the little boat with like a 7 horsepower motor on it. We used to go around and then Knoxtown Lake with it. That's all you were allowed, I think, was a 7 horsepower. Other than St. Andrews, when they had the race boats, they had a bit larger boat, but it was a lot of fun.
Did Mom go in the boat with you?
Huh?
Yeah.
I made a boat.
Yeah, but I went.
She'd go in the boat with you?
Lee's brother and I made a boat
And that's the boat you used, huh?
for a while till it got kind of warpy. And he decided to take it in the back of the pond and sink it.
That was nice. Do that to the pond.
How long did you guys know each other before you got married?
I'd say quite a few years.
Couple years?
Well,
3 or 4 years.
I met her before I went into service.
He was in service for 2 years.
I would say 4 or 5 years.
When he got out of the service, then we got married.
Okay. Did you live together before you got married?
No, you didn't do that.
No
Wait,
way.
Whoa, look,
I'm
don't lose
just
my
asking.
breath.
It's different these days.
It's a lot different these days.
These days you do.
Number
Lot-
one,
lot-
you would bring shame to your family.
Yeah.
Oops, better not do that.
Well, the big question for Grandma, what was it like when he proposed? Do you remember where it happened and how did you feel?
I can remember Rita saying, if you come to my house, you better intend to marry me. Because your father would meet me then. And that was more or less firmed up that when I went to her house, I was going to marry you.
Okay.
Yeah, because my dad was not going to have guys walking out. This is John, this is Ted, this is Frank.
So did you guys know you were going to get engaged? Did you talk
Well,
about that?
We would meet at the dances and stuff like that. I mean, I was going out with him, but you didn't parade him around the house.
Spending 2 years in the Army gave you time to think about a lot of that because that's when he got engaged.
And you bought your diamond from in the military. From the,
And I think wasn't it active at the time? Wasn't there something going on? And he was in the service. It was like a little bit, something was going on.
Well, that was a Korean,
Yeah, so the Korean.
they called it the Korean police action.
Yeah, the Korean War, they
The
says
people
police action.
died even after they called it a police action.
And these fellows
I
were
didn't
all
go
going
to,
in.
I didn't go to Korea, I stayed in South Carolina.
Right.
He
North
was
Carolina.
lucky. He was very, very lucky because
I think
Fort
you're,
Bragg.
weren't they coming to the end of that? What was happening? That's why you didn't get picked to go over there. It was ending.
They just didn't send anybody else over, it stopped.
it was turned down.
Dan Tierney, who was best man in my wedding one,
Mhm.
he went to Korea.
He did go.
But he was about the only one in our section. And Rick Rummel went off to school. Of course, these people have all died since.
And they were all a group of them who
Mhm.
knew each other, went in service together, kept in touch with each other after they left, and we all knew each other.
We'd come home on weekends, coming up the highway 80,
Yeah,
80 to 85 miles an hour all the way. I was a nervous wreck.
they only had 2 days, or not even. Now they got home, half the time was gone, so they turn around and go right back. They did
Well,
that.
I've got some more questions about your service coming up in a little bit as well, so we'll dive into detail a little bit there too.
2 hours.
But Grandma, how did your mom prepare you for your wedding?
Well, I think that she pretty much let me do what I was going to do, and I was working at the time. Guess what? You also always pitched in. So what I probably bought my own wedding dress, and suggested where I'd like to have it, the reception because there wasn't that many places. And she was open to all of that. She was very good.
Where did you have your wedding and reception?
It was on, what's that, 4th Street? What's the name of that
Corner
place?
Hall or something. I'm not
Corner
sure.
Hall. It's right on 4th Street off of Union Street. There wasn't much going on as far as getting places. But
It was a
that's
big
what we
building.
had.
It was a nice wedding.
We got married at St.
I had all
Anthony's.
my people
St.
from work
Anthony's?
come, even my boss came.
Yeah.
We were married at St. Anthony's, which is a beautiful church to get married in.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you have a memory that stands out about your wedding day?
You?
I can remember I said to my mom I didn't feel too good. I guess it was nerves. And so she said, so she gives me a shot of whiskey and egg. That finished me off. I remember that. Whiskey and egg.
This
Nice.
is before the wedding. She's run through this. She drank a lot. His mother drank a lot. I think
Well,
God
they
wasn't.
drank.
He did. He
She
never
thought
turned
that
out
would
like
settle
that.
my nerves.
Right.
It settled my nerves all right.
So after your wedding, did you have a honeymoon? Did you
Yes.
have anything big or small?
And the honeymoon, the guys from the party, his friends, followed us all the way down to Maryland.
Tuckaway Manor.
They
I
followed
know
us.
Tootsie Studebaker.
We had to
We
keep
went
going.
around for the honeymoon to all of the places in Pennsylvania and
Yeah.
Washington.
Yeah, we went
Went
south
to all
though.
the caverns they had
Yeah.
there.
Well, they
Right,
followed you,
Captain
but
Capital.
what ended
I
that
know,
follow?
they were following us. We couldn't shake
Yeah,
them.
they were half looped.
They were all looped.
Uh,
So one of the police didn't get them.
That was Dan Tierney and Rick Rummel.
They were heavy triggers.
so, what do you most admire about your spouse now after being with them for so many years?
That's a tough question.
It is.
It isn't tough at all. Bob is very sincere. He's very honest. I would trust him. That's the most important part. I never had to question his behavior ever. He was a very good dad. I have no complaints.
She wonders why I have to go to the store so often. And when I go to the store, usually with Barry, where'd you do? Go to the casino?
Well, now I throw that in.
Yeah,
you know, 'cause
girlfriend.
And we never went to the casino except once, and that was to get her a necklace.
I have to talk about something, right?
One
Hey,
more.
what, you got a girlfriend down there?
Well, I do remember as a kid growing up going to the store with Pop, and he was a very social person to the cashier and to the ladies.
See?
So
Even though
he was a very friendly person to them, and in response, they were just as friendly back. So
Well, I hope that when you were little then you learned something from him. Did that in any way influence you as you grew older that you might want to be like Grandpa when he met people?
just making small talk, and
And you're good at that.
is
When I go to the store now with Barry, he's the same way. He's very sociable.
He is sociable.
and that's
Very
good.
sociable.
That's important, though.
That was good, yeah.
One more question here, and this is probably the toughest one, and I want to hear both of your thoughts on this. What do you believe is the key to a successful marriage?
You know, I was asked that same question years ago when we were in Atlantic City, when we were celebrating, I think, our 50th anniversary. He asked me that same question,
That's
and
strange.
you know what? I couldn't say anything. So they made it up. Oh, silence.
Yeah. Keep going.
Silence. Don't argue with anything.
Yeah, don't argue.
Just let it go.
If you start that arguing crap, that's a bad habit.
Yeah.
So we usually always, even though I might be mad about something,
Yeah.
we never dragged it out. If it was for the benefit of the kids or something, we might have our moments, but we knew we'd want to resolve it because we want to stay together. If you don't want to stay with somebody, keep fighting.
Yeah.
That's a good way to break up.
Yeah. Very good. The next section is called starting a family.
Oops.
And so you're now living together. And where did you first live together?
We lived, we lived with our parents for a short time. Then we rented an apartment over over on the DuPont Highway.
Yeah, there wasn't many
Manor-
places to get,
Manor-
yeah. There's a lot of apartments over
Manor
there.
Apartments,
Big
stayed there
apartments.
maybe for 4 years
Wasn't that
before we
long.
bought a home in
I don't think it was
Marshallton.
that long.
And what was it like buying your first home together?
Oh, that was neat.
Well,
We
it
enjoyed that.
wasn't too hard because we had support from her parents.
Right.
I borrowed the money. I didn't get the gift. I borrowed it and I paid it all back when we, as little by little.
I think the house was like 12,500, and it had,
Yeah.
the builder had built them, they
We
were.
only had 2
Marshall.
bedrooms.
And they couldn't get them sold. So they were eager to get that done, and we stepped in at the right time. And it was our first house.
Yeah.
We didn't stay, because it wasn't enough as we had family, we moved.
It was a nice brick home.
Do you
It had a comb, had a fireplace.
do you remember walking into your house together and saying, "This is ours. This is where we're going to live together"?
Well, we always did things together as far as deciding if we could always tell what the person liked it or not. It had to be something you both
The
liked.
funny part is, saying that, the thing that I really remember is walking into the place down at the
Beach.
where was it?
I don't know. I'm trying to say.
Bay
it.
Shore when we bought that home.
Oh,
This
that
is
was
ours,
Right.
you know.
Right. So you bought a house together over at Marshallton, and then when did you start to decide that you wanted to have children and expand your family? Were you at that location?
Yeah, and it only had 2 bedrooms in that
Yeah.
house. It was well built by a tank contractor, but it only had 2 bedrooms.
Mhm.
Had a big, nice fireplace and everything, but it wasn't going to work for us, and we knew we were going to have to move on. So Sherwood Park was
But
was
you
it
didn't have
Sure,
children
Park.
at
Then
the
we
house.
Nadine
But
was
not-
born.
it didn't have
and-
that
and
much room to
Barry
kind
came
of stay in
along.
there.
Now we
yeah.
got the boy and a girl and
Yeah.
only the 1 bedroom, so we decided
Right.
it was time to move, and that's when we came
Right.
to.
And Sherwood Park was
Sherwood Park,
developing all their
number 2.
homes. Yeah.
So you moved to Sherwood Park. Now,
Yeah.
going back to finding out that you were pregnant, Grandma, with your first child, what was that like?
Wasn't so good because I was sick all the time.
You were sick a lot?
I had, that early time sickness.
Yeah.
But it was exciting. Yeah, we were ready to move on to our next.
Mhm.
Well, we're living in Manor Park Apartments, so I guess it was.
Yeah, I think they wanted to get a house.
We had the neighbors, and we'd go out with them. But I remember going to Maryland, they were fans of the University of Maryland, I guess, with the football game. And she was pregnant, and I looked down and I said, whoa. I didn't realize she was that big.
Hey, you're not carrying that.
Mom was tiny.
I'm
Mom was
not.
a very
Yeah.
tiny person.
We're
small
walking
box
down the
because-
grandstands, and I had to hold her hand because I didn't want her to fall.
Yeah.
Sure.
I forgot all that, for heaven's sakes.
So were you nervous because you're getting ready to have your first baby?
I got very nervous. Dick White, who has since died, could tell you about that. He started talking about it. He says, first thing you know, I'm sick. This is at lunchtime. He says, we'll change the subject.
Did you get any parenting tips from your parents? Before,
Most of us are hard-headed trimmers, and we don't take tips.
yeah.
Ask this guy, dude. It's his way or no way.
That could be a franchise too.
And did great grandmom Franchiotti offer any advice to you?
My mother was so easygoing, and she'd have you laughing with anybody she met. And so she was great as far as, I knew she was always there for us, and
Yeah.
she was good.
Yeah. Why did you choose your children's names?
Oh, good lordy.
Just
I
sounded cool?
poured over names for quite a while, because a woman would do that. I don't know the guy would. Just
He's got my middle name,
Right.
but Barry, I think
Wait a
was
minute.
like that.
I would say,
Mom liked that name.
why did you name Nadine Nadine? You
Uh,
were in a play.
I was was raised with a girl, and her sister was Nadine, and I thought that had a musical little touch to it. Yeah,
But didn't you play in the play with Nadine?
I don't recall that part, but I know when I was younger that in Wilmington we lived near a girl whose name was Nadine. I thought, well, I never heard that name till then. And that stuck with me. So she, I don't know, she
she
liked it.
also shared your middle name, Ann, but
Oh, yeah,
spelled
that was-
differently
yeah.
though.
Yeah, that why was when you used to go and get go to church where your blessings with everybody your age and first communion, I guess it would be, and they always said take a middle name, just out of the blue you'd say. I always liked my Aunt Ann. She was my godmother. She was good to me. She also passed away young. Remember that? Yeah.
Well, my middle name is Edward. I got that from my uncle.
And you gave it to
I
Uncle
gave it
Barry.
to Barry.
Yeah. Any reason why Barry is named Barry?
I always liked it. I always liked that name. That's funny that you brought that
The
up.
only thing I can think
of
about it is,
No.
back in the old days, long before you could remember, there was a movie actor, his name was Barry Sullivan. And I liked his acting. That's the only one I can remember who was named Barry.
I just liked the name. I can't. It's
I mean, he had Barry Fitzgerald, and,
No, he was old.
but
Yeah.
Barry Sullivan is the one I can remember.
What about Karen, Mary?
My Aunt Mary, she was just a wonderful person to me. It's Randy's, DeCampley's mother, and she was so close and everything for me, and she was just a wonderful person to be part of my life. But she did not live long, and she died young, and that was very, very hard for me to accept. So,
But
I took
Karen,
her in.
was Karen in the play? Was that, because Karen was in the 50s, that was,
now I think I had that in the play. I was in a lot of plays in high school,
Right.
and I had major roles. Can you imagine? And one of them had your name on it.
And stuck with you, and you like that one?
She
Yeah.
tells me, because we got married, prevented her from being a Hollywood movie star. She tells me that.
I was that close.
Well, what are some of your proudest moments as a parent?
My children.
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say that too.
I can remember this one being born, that one, and this, of course, Nadine. But that was about my three proudest moments.
And I had a difficult time delivering him because apparently it wasn't going to work the regular way. I had to have cesarean, but we didn't know that.
Right.
So now I'm going like, oh my God, I don't think I'm going to make this. It was very scary. Unfortunately, whether that was stress on Nadine, I always think about it that way, as being born through all that commotion. And I always keep thinking maybe that was part of what, followed her. But I was fortunate to raise the three children.
I remember them carrying Barry through the waiting room, because that's how they had to get to wherever they were going. And they showed me Barry, and it didn't look too good because it was a lot of blood.
Well, that's when they're first born. With the
Probably
cesarean. They just came out of
You can't take
They just
blood.
came
Yeah,
out of the.
What do you
cute little
survive?
I'm
thing.
telling that was
Cute little baby.
Well, going home from the hospital, there were no car seats like
No.
there are now.
You held the child.
Nowadays, you have to have the child buckled in the car seat. They actually look at the car seat.
Yeah.
And so, you brought the kids home literally sitting on your lap.
Yeah, really. Hold him in the
Right.
blanket.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
Probably with no seatbelts.
No.
No,
Right.
There was we no seatbelt. Who had seatbelts?
Right.
That was something for the future.
The seatbelts I had, I put in myself.
Later on.
Later on, I bought seatbelts and put them in.
I don't think cars came with seatbelts. Is that right?
I think
Cars,
it was
the
a
old, that they,
50 Chevrolet.
seatbelts. That was the law later on, wasn't it? Wasn't that a
He's
law
got
later?
seatbelts in his truck. I don't think he uses them, do you? Do you?
So, the kids are growing up.
Oh my God.
And what do you enjoy doing together as a family?
While they're still with us?
Yes.
Well, you know what? As an only child, I found it difficult.
We went to New Jersey a lot, to the beaches over there.
And we had
With the
fun
kids
with them.
when
I
they were
don't mean to
small.
say that, but I found the raising of them to be really tough at times. And I didn't expect that because I'm an only child. I I did everything my parents said. I didn't get them upset. But I thought that was about the roughest thing I had to accept. And I just pulled myself together. He didn't want to hear any of it. That can be something you do in your family that can take your husband and wife. And,
Sure. Yeah.
you know,
So you went to New Jersey for vacations,
oh,
and
yeah.
do you remember any other family vacations or planning any other vacations?
I think the beach was always the thing because the
Yeah,
kids
yeah,
liked
they
the
did the
beach.
beach when they were small.
Yeah, they always liked the beach. That's
What'd
it.
you do Christmas or anything like that?
Christmas, well, my parents are still alive, and I'm going to be entertaining my parents, you know? So that's pretty much what we did. And we would have family gathering because we had presents for everyone.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I made it a point, Joshua, and it's something for you to remember, too, with family, because you're going to guide them. If you act like you don't care,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to influence them the same way. So you have to, I wanted to have that around me. Because guess what? You didn't get too much. There's my mom, dad, and me sitting around
Right.
the table.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think these days are a lot different, where families are planning things. They
Yeah.
do events,
More active,
summer
yeah.
vacations,
Right.
and more involvement together. So,
Yeah.
not that the family before, the old school family wasn't involved together. It was just in a different way.
It was in a different way.
Yeah.
It was more like keeping you straight as far as don't get in trouble, stuff would be with the right people. So a lot of things that they had to guide you through. Because you could easily sway out, and some people did.
Yeah. All right. Next section is called work life.
Oh, God, you still got another section.
This is question number 57. What was your first job? Your first
Yeah.
job as a teenager, as a kid growing up?
My first job was painting toys for Christmas. And then I
Heard that. What
used to
else?
set pins in bowling lanes.
Right.
And then I started with DuPont when I was 17.
Has 17.
And you were with DuPont for the rest of your time, right?
36 years.
So at 55 you retired.
Wow.
Yeah, I retired
Can't
at
remember.
55.
Grandma, what'd you do as a teenager to get money, maybe?
There's a few homes along here that had children, and they would call me when I was old enough to do that. I would babysit for people along this road,
Mm-hmm.
and I earned a few pennies, so to speak, to go to the movies on Saturday, which means walk from here to way up to the end of this road to
Yep.
go to the bus.
Yep.
And my mom gave me a little bit of money, but I always find a way to make a few more pennies.
Were you a big saver?
Well, I did just to get myself to go to a movie and see things. I was so enthralled with movies at the time, which I think it just used as an artist. I think it helped me because I saw a lot of things in the movies that I retained, like thinking about
Right.
painting and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So, after that, after babysitting and going through college and
It wasn't college.
Or
it was like a business school.
business school,
Right.
you learned law of some sort, right?
Well, the business school would give, if lawyers called looking for what the secretary, it gave my name out. And I had a very prestigious law firm. Sort of scary. I was like 18. I go in and the old boss, the big boss, was there. This table, the room's bigger than this, the big table, and a tough guy. I mean, I was instantly put into that. I'll never forget it because it sticks with me.
Well, you were a secretary too.
I know, but it was daunting as an 18-year-old young girl.
Yeah. Yeah. And how long did you do that for?
I
Um,
became friends with all of them. Even when the kids were born and stuff, they'd give gifts to me. We kept some of them closer than others. Now, one of the lawyers left, and he bought a building a few blocks away, and he put his own setup. And naturally, he gives me the big responsibility. So I was with him for quite a while in the law firm there for him. Because he adopted several kids
Even
and all.
when Nadine was little, you were still doing work for him.
Yeah, he adopted children, and he loved to be with those kids. So he would leave it for me to run the
Well,
show.
he also died at a young
He
age.
did die at a young age.
So she went back to work to help straighten his
Yeah, I did all
papers out
of
with
that.
the
See, I knew his records
new
completely.
lawyer that took over the business, because you know how lawyers are, papers all over the place.
Yeah.
I did do that, and then I pulled back. I don't know. I think it was with my family then after that.
And so you decided to, you were doing artwork for ever since you were a kid.
Yeah. It was
But then, was there a point where you decided that I'm going to focus a lot more on artwork?
Well, that would be much later after we're raising the children, I think.
Okay.
Then you had to really apply yourself to your family. But I still have it. It's always, you see, I've got my stuff around me. It's just part of me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's
I
good to
think you
have
got
it.
more involved in artwork after everybody got married.
Yeah.
with their own-
I taught
their
at the
own
Y. I
way.
taught
We
kids
were
and
by
adults at the
ourselves.
Y. Every year they always hired me to come in. I enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was a people person. And if you remember anything about my mom, she had a good laugh. She's always enjoyed people. I learned a lot from her.
Pop, what was the main thing you did in your profession at DuPont?
The main thing.
Yeah, what did you do there?
I was an accountant. I became a senior accounting analyst when I retired. And that was about all. I don't know why I got into accounting, because I really wasn't that great with mathematics, but that's what I did.
Right.
Yeah, but your numbers, he was so precise.
I learned the job.
Precise.
In fact, on the one job I learned so well that they wanted me to teach all the other people. But back in those days, it was the old-fashioned way, and this is before computers. And when computers came in, it was a different story. I
Right.
didn't go for that. In fact, shortly after computers came in is when I retired.
It's a whole new world.
If you could have any other profession or have chosen any other pathway, would you have chosen a different pathway or a different profession?
He had the profession.
I'm not sure. I never gave it a thought whether I would like to do something else. I made
You're
up
so
my
good
mind,
at what
I'm
you
with
did.
this job, that's what I'm going to stay with.
Mm-hmm.
He's always dedicated to his job. So I worked. The lawyers I worked for, and the last lawyer I worked for, he adopted several children, and we became close friends with his family. He was very good to us, and we enjoyed being with them. So we stepped beyond just being worked together.
Right.
Yeah, but we were part families together. It was nice.
And so, Grandma, as after the kids grew up and moved out, you focused more on artwork, and you were doing many paintings. I mean, was your ultimate goal to be able to go to shows and sell paintings, or were you doing this for fun and then decided, wait, I can make a living out of this?
No, I never tried to make a living out of it, no, because Pop and I, we bought the beach house and everything. Now we were going in another direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had all the fun enjoying family coming down and that type of thing.
But you did teach for
I
quite
can
I
remember
did
the
teach.
first painting she sold. That was a big thing, because this was the
Where
start.
was I? Where
Right.
was I?
But you did teach.
I did teach at the Y for quite a while. I had a wonderful time with different ages, from kids to adults. And I was so amazed at how it opened their eyes and how thrilled they were that they accomplished a painting of some sort. And that was very exciting. I thought that was well worth the time.
It's worth the reward, yeah.
Yeah.
So you taught quite a few years because you taught at the other place in Hillcastle,
Yeah, I
and then you
did.
taught at the house.
She remembers all that better than me. Yeah, I did. But boy, I enjoyed it. That's what counts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I related, they got sort of, a lot of people are frightened. You feel you're going to demand so much from it, they can't even hold it. So the challenge is, how do you use your personality to reach their personality?
Right.
And that's the key, you know. It's not like, oh, I can't do it, which is what they say to you. I can't, oh, this is harder than I thought. Well, once you move in there in a nice, softer way, and you open that channel for them, they work they work it right out, and they're so pleased. That was the most exciting thing, when people were so pleased with what they did.
In fact, the first house we bought, I did some painting also. I painted all the cartoons on the silver walls.
They were great.
I was good at copying and making it bigger, but I wasn't good at, as she was, just coming up with your own ideas out of your head. I had a copy.
We did
But he
Bugs
did a great
Bunny.
job. Yeah, he did all
Bugs
the.
Bunny.
You can't remember that because you weren't over there.
I
You were
had
there,
a lot
but
of
not
cartoons on the cellar walls
big.
in Marshallton.
And they were painted beautifully. It's a shame we left, and the people there didn't want them.
And they were realistic. They looked just like something Walt Disney did.
Bugs Bunny and
They weren't
the whole
they weren't
thing.
sloppy.
Wow.
Are you trying to wrap it up?
We don't have many left. And you've already answered a lot of them anyway, so
Okay, good.
I'm just going to kind of skip over them a little bit. So, positive qualities about your parents. We heard Grandma and Pop. Any positive qualities about your parents? What were they?
The one I can remember, my dad, he would read the newspaper from beginning to end. That was what he would do every night. He wasn't handy at anything, but he would not miss anything in the newspaper. Later on, he clipped coupons, but that was when he was by himself. But I could always remember the newspaper was what he would read. My mom, I don't know, what qualities she had.
Don't bring them up.
I don't want to say anything bad about them because they're deceased, but
There's nothing bad to say. They were
They
just
were good
parents.
they're good parents. They bought, I can remember they bought my sister and I
Great son.
bicycles, our first bicycle at Christmas time, and we never saw them in the room. They were leaning against the wall, and they had to tell us, there's bicycle.
You never
I
saw
rode
them.
that bicycle that day until I could hardly walk. Because I was so small, and I couldn't really sit on the seat.
Yeah, Pop was short. Could you believe it? He was small.
Do you know how your parents met?
I think my mother was introduced to my father because when they would come, people would come over from the old country. There was always some camaraderie as far as, oh, we know somebody, and they'd introduce them to a potential spouse. It's pretty much how that worked. And my mother, she was very good. She was very a people person. And my father was very serious, so that was like a good match.
I have no idea how my parents met. No idea.
Okay. Do you have any memories about your grandparents or your great-grandparents?
Great-grandparents their name was Mealisen, and he made a lot of wine. And I can remember he had a dog that didn't like me. And I can remember our last visit over there, when my great-grandmother died, that was right in the house. They were gonna teach me to smoke. I got sick.
My grandparents,
Or great-grandparents? Yeah.
yeah, they from the old country, and my grandpa was a very much of a people person, and he loved. The thing about I always remember as a child, he'd always do little animations for me with his hands, like make things and make me laugh. I'm laughing now as I remember it, but he was very, very good that way. Now my grandma was the serious one. Now here come the hard work and let's get everything picked, ready for from the garden, ready to go to market. And she'd have it all washed and pull a wagon. And sometimes Grandpa, of course, would have aid her. But that's how they brought that from Rodman Street, which is quite a long ways up to the center of where the market was, Lincoln Street, and made money.
My grandfather was built like you. They used to call him Big Ed.
Oh,
He was built just like you are.
about that.
His favorite pastime was going to the store with this stainless steel bucket he'd had filled with beer. That's what he would come home with. He'd sit in the kitchen.
A bucket of beer. Thank God you're not like that.
What did you call your parents growing up, and what did others call them? Mom, Ma,
For me,
Dad.
Mom and Dad?
Yeah, you had to dress them as mom and dad, nothing else, but.
Sure. Do you remember any other people calling them different names or anything?
My mother was called Danetta, which was like abbreviation of Antoinette. Her brothers called her Danetta, and her friends called her Danetta.
Well, my dad, of course, was named Eugene, and my mom would call him Huge. Anybody else would call him Gene. And
Okay.
they wouldn't call him Eugene. But that's spelled different than my sister. My sister was Gene, Jean, and he was Eugene.
Can you share a story about your mom?
My mother she was so well liked, and she always had a laugh for the people. When she was with somebody, you'd always hear laughter. She was that type of person, which really gave me an idea of what it's like to be on that side of the page. And she was well liked, and she liked to do things. She didn't have to take these garden things that they grew here, all the vegetables and stuff. But she was thrilled to go to the market and interact with the people.
So not only did she go to the market, but she had a stand right down here at the bottom of the driveway.
On the off days, she'd have a stand here, but usually she'd have the local kids want to make some money, and she'd have them sit out there, and she would give them money.
How about
Yeah, well,
Barry?
and our grandkids,
Wait
yeah,
a
the
minute, Nadine,
grandkids.
Barry, and Karen.
Yeah, they did it
That
first.
was our summer
But
chore.
Yeah,
When they were out of that area, I remember that other children in the neighborhood would come and help Mom out. Yeah, they
They're
did. I
very
ran the
good.
girl down the street.
Most of the time it was me, Nadine, or Barry, and we spent our whole summer watching that stand. That was what we had to
It was a
do,
must.
was required,
It was a must.
yeah.
I can remember, well, years ago, my mom took me to the department store around Christmas time, and they had a fishing line. You threw it over the wall, down below whatever's down there. And I'm reeling it in, and here comes this great big box Christmas present. And I was amazed how that got on there.
You hooked it,
Santa
all
Claus
by
did it.
yourself.
Can you share a story about your father? And Grandma, you shared the story with us a couple of weeks ago about great grandpa going to work and getting bullied, and then him standing up for himself. Could you share that with us again?
Yeah. Well, during the war, the Dravos down on the riverfront they were making ships for the war effort. And you could get a very good job, good paying job. Well, he went, and he's a hard worker, by the way. Nobody would have to say he was being lazy. But the Irish were working there at the time, and they were the stronger group. And started picking on Pop.
Well, he was Italian.
And he was Italian, probably had a bit of an accent, of course, but he was a strong person. At any rate, they were pushing him around, and he got in an encounter with them and took care of himself as far as making them step back. And I think they respected him after that. That's the way you could only get by. Nobody's babying you in there. So he stood up for himself, and then, of course, he was accepted into them because they knew they were not going to question him again about something. But they were making fun of him. They was mocking him because he had an accent at the time, and he was from the old country. It was very difficult in those days.
Sure.
Yeah.
Pop, do you have any stories about your dad?
My dad and I spent a lot of time fishing, and I have always remember going up into the Oxentown Lake, back in the splatter docks with these long bamboo poles, and dropping them in there and catching all these yellow perch, and we'd bring them back and clean them. And later on, I showed you how to fillet them. That's how we would actually pick the bones, And we used to do an awful lot of fishing.
Grandma, did your parents speak Italian in the house?
A little bit. Even my dad was trying to make sure he could speak more clearly in English because he worked for quite a few people when he took over doing garden work and mowing and taking their lawns and all, because he had to deal with people who spoke not Italian, so
Right.
he sort of picked up more.
Did any of your parents or grandparents or great grandparents serve in the military?
My great grandfather, I don't know, the Spanish-American War, he had a lot of relics that were supposed to come to me, the old guns, and he ended up giving them to his son-in-law, who put them up in his recreation room and then sold the house and them with it. The only thing I have left was the American flag that you have, with
Wow.
the 42 stars or whatever it is.
I don't have
that
that.
flag?
No, not that I know of.
What happened to that
I
flag?
don't know. It's your flag, not my flag.
No.
It was a big flag, it's pretty well worn out.
Okay.
It was a 13-star flag.
Huh?
13-star flag?
No, it wasn't that old.
13 stars, he
I
said.
thought you had 13 stars.
I said it
13
wasn't
stars.
That's what
I
ours.
said it wasn't that old.
I never seen a flag
It had
like that.
42 stars.
No.
But I was supposed to get all the relics that he had. He had them all framed because I was his oldest grandson. But Arlene, my aunt, her husband got them all. And he had a record when we put them in.
That was a shame. Well, your father should have stood up for you.
I
Didn't
don't
he?
have that flag then.
Oh.
I thought you used it.
Might be around.
Huh?
Never seen it. Never seen it.
I thought I gave it to you as the oldest grandson.
No, never seen it.
You got my glove?
I think I do.
Oh!
Yeah,
I may have given it back. I'm not sure what happened as a
Yeah,
kid.
you also had a Swiss Army knife.
I got that
One
still.
I
I
never
still got that.
That disappeared too.
I got that.
It's gotta be around, I was gonna say, it's gotta be around here
Maybe
somewhere.
that flag's down there in that cabinet.
It was at the other house, and that was the last I
Oh,
remember.
Lord.
Oh, that was 100 years
20 years
ago.
ago.
It was wrapped up because it was so fragile.
Then you were a baby over there at the other
I
house.
was
We
like,
get
oh,
thrown
I'd like to
out.
have this flag. I thought Josh got it or you got it.
I don't
Never
have
seen
Maybe
it.
Nadine got it.
Of all the things that you've learned from your parents, is there one thing that you feel is most valuable?
You want to go first? Well, he's having a hard time.
Well.
I recall my parents being not afraid of tackling work about that one. So, you know, whatever it took to make a living, they went right in there. Even if it was mom going up to the market with her produce, or, you know, my dad found a good following, and people knew he was very good at caring for properties, you know, and they would recommend him to the other people, so he never had trouble getting a job. And they would give him really very nice gifts of money. They were very good to him, but they knew he was a hard worker, so.
I was taught to be seen and not heard.
Do you remember your parents ever discussing world events or politics?
All the time.
My grandfather rather, Trimmer Kemp, he would talk politics, he would talk religion, and neither of them were any good. But he'd get very involved in that.
Religion, you don't talk about that.
Yeah. But that was that the conversation of the dinner table sort of thing?
Yeah, well, Josh and my father worked with wealthy people, but he was always proud of what he did, and everybody liked him very much. So, I mean, he managed to make himself clearer in his speech and what have you. So, I always realized how much effort that would take if I was in his place, and I think about it. I think you had to really be strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the final section of this. It's called Just This and That. I mean, these are questions that I just don't really have a connection to much of anything else. Are there any stories about famous or infamous relatives in the family?
The gap.
I can't remember anybody being famous in my family.
Grandma's famous. Grandma's famous. Are there any recipes that have been passed down from your parents to you to your children?
I'm not much for cooking. My mother was. She had the
It's odd.
recipes.
I mean, not spitzad, spianad,
Yeah.
the Easter bread.
Yeah. You did that.
Barry's wife makes it and I make it. But
Yeah, the girls do.
Mm-hmm.
Her mother was a good cook.
She liked that. That was
Say
her
that.
pastime.
Yeah.
She outdid my mother. My mother was not a good cook. But her mother, when she would make cakes, they would take a lick. When my mother would make cakes,
Yeah.
That's a shame.
it didn't work out.
She cared for it.
Are there any physical characteristics that you see in your children, down to your grandchildren, and even your great grandchildren?
I think so.
I can vouch for this guy here. He's a chip off the old block of my father-in-law.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, I see a lot of traits in my father-in-law.
For sure.
Very, very
I agree
much.
100%.
He does, and they go like, oh, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, right, just like Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got your hair gene, Pop.
Yes.
Well,
I'm very.
Yeah, that came from
That's
that
a lot
side.
of
And you have an
I wanna
interest
tell
in
you,
art like
there's a
mom.
lot of
Yeah.
famous people that are bald.
It's true.
They have nice
And I
hair
can
pieces
completely
now.
shave it all off. And I can name a couple of them, Telly Savalas, Yul Brynner.
Oh, look at this. You don't want to hear all that. That's not it. You got all.
Now we got Howie Mandel.
Yeah.
Oh,
Are there any special heirlooms, photos, Bibles, other memorabilia that have been passed down from your great grandparents besides the flag?
I got the flag, I got a little photo in here that my parents gave me when I was probably first grader. I got it hanging in the other room.
Print it out.
They didn't take too many pictures of me when I was young. I don't have many pictures of that.
Anything on your side, Grandma, that you know of?
She, I have your war ration book, Pop's war
During the
ration.
war, you, according to your family, they only have one child. You got some coupons to buy food.
And gas.
Mom and Dad only had me, so you kind of had to hit what's the market called that was under, beyond the reach as far as the normal family.
The black market?
The black market
yeah.
on good meat.
And mom would go, yeah, then they started saying it was horse meat, so we could have been eating horse meat during the bad part of the war, because everything was going to what needed to be carried on for survival.
And there was a lot of waste when that was given to the overseas. It was getting in the wrong hands.
Yeah.
And even when I was in the service, the cooks were taking the meat and selling it.
Yeah.
One time they sold it to the wrong person.
Uh-oh, they
So-
got caught, huh?
Yeah.
Pop, back to your service. When and where did you serve in the military, and what were your duties?
I was in what they called survey. We do the survey so that the microphones could be set up for the guns to determine where the sound was coming from. And I was in there for 2 years. I went in for 18 months, and Ike Eisenhower said it's going to be 24 months.
And this is during which war?
This was the Korean police action,
Okay.
so they called it.
Yeah. Now you were never sent overseas or anything.
No, some were.
Lucky.
Some of my
Lucky.
friends were sent overseas.
His friends were.
Went to Korea, but
what-
I didn't.
Where
I
were
did
you
North
sent?
Carolina
North Carolina.
Stationed in
2
North
years.
Carolina, what time?
or Prague.
Were you ever injured in the service?
No one I knew was injured except one person went home on leave and shot himself in the foot thinking that we wouldn't have to go back. He was still in the Army when I got out because he had to make up for all that lost time.
Oh my God.
That was the only one person I knew was injured.
He was desperate.
Were any of you ever mentioned in the newspaper?
I have been with my artwork.
I was when I was playing intramural basketball scores. So as short as I was, I still could make baskets. So the scoreboards were in there. That's the only time I was in there.
When you scored the points.
My parents were in there for wedding anniversaries and stuff like that,
Okay.
other than the obituaries.
I was in
We
it
all get
for,
in there on that.
for the activity in the theater work, so
Yeah.
that was fun.
What wars were fought during your lifetime, and how do you feel about them? I mean, I'll start with World War II.
Yeah, that's it. World War II was pretty dramatic. the number one thing that I can remember the most is that no lights would be allowed. Everything was pitch black out here in the country. And it was scary. It was scary, but you were not allowed to have lights. They had a siren that went off. They had to really.
All the headlights on cars had to be painted at the top with black paint so that they wouldn't shine up in the sky. That was a law. You had to have the headlights painted black.
Right.
Amazing.
Interesting. What about
Remember that.
how did you feel about Vietnam?
I can't sort
I
of
felt
reach
sorry
out
for the
about
troops
that.
because they didn't get any credit for going to Vietnam. They'd come back and they'd get criticized.
Yeah, good.
I just felt sorry. And it wasn't their fault.
Right. And then now we're into the 90s was Desert Storm, and now we're into Operation Iraqi Freedom. Do you have any opinions on those wars that went on?
No, I don't want to put any blame on anybody. I think some of the wars could have been eliminated and
Soft, different methods.
different techniques, yeah.
Mhm. Have you ever met any famous people?
What am I laughing?
Don DeLuise, we met down in Atlantic City.
Okay.
I don't think you know him, but
He
he's
was
a comedian.
Oh
He
my
was telling
God.
his mother, he was there on
Italian
one of
lady.
these trains that ride on the boardwalk. He's telling his mother she needed a new pocketbook.
He was a
How did
big
you know he was
comedian, Don DeLuise. He happened to be on the boardwalk, and I spoke up to him because you know how I
He
am.
did a couple movies.
He was so funny, and he had a good on the shows on TV. It was
He was built like you.
and but when I saw him in Atlantic City walking down there, and then, I think his mother he pushed. Anyway, boy, I hit the jackpot because he was one of my favorite comedians. And there he had in Atlantic City on the boardwalk, and he was enjoying that I noticed him and said something to him. And then here's my mom. He was carrying on an act. Now I stirred him up. That was a moment. That was great.
Have you ever belonged to any organizations or groups?
Well, I joined a lot of groups.
I used to belong to the DMLA.
Which is
It's a group of boys. They have secret meetings and all that stuff.
Ooh,
I didn't stay that too long.
yeah, secret
I
meetings.
started joining the Boy Scouts. That didn't last down very long either. I said, they were always saying, well, what job do you want to do? And I said, wait a minute, I'm not even a member yet. You want to put me on a job. So
Not very good at
I
that.
canceled that out.
and Grandma, you belong to a lot of art groups.
Yes, I did, and I had a wonderful time because I managed to. I put big shows together, and I used my skills that way as well as being an artist, and met a lot of people. It was fun. It was fun to be part of that.
What made you decide to live in this house today?
Actually, this house was stayed empty for a while after my parents were gone. Didn't quite know what wanted to do with
I don't
it,
think she wanted to see it go anywhere.
and we kept it empty. Except you could feel their presence when you came in.
Because we had all kinds of plans. We were even going to build on the other side of the house here. We were even going to think of going upstairs, and then we ended up just doing the garage.
Okay. But you don't wish that you lived anywhere else?
No, this is great.
It's just,
It's old home,
Yeah, yeah.
to where you raised. You were raised here.
I got married to take care of the place. I can't do it on my own anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we might have to do something about that.
Uh-huh. When did you decide that you were going to get a beach home and travel down there?
Well, I think our
I think
family.
Karen started that when she invited us to go down to rent somebody's trailer. And we went down to see it, and when you walk from one end, it tilted like this. And so we went and looked at other trailers, and we found one at Potnet's, I guess was, that was for sale. It was a new trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was right in the corner, you
Mm,
had water right around you, and it was an ideal spot.
I remember that trailer.
Yeah.
If it's the same trailer that I'm
Yeah.
thinking of, you never had a different one at Potnet's.
Right.
No, we had it
Yeah, right on the end there.
bigger,
Yep.
but we caught a lot of crabs right off the pier there.
Yeah.
We had a good time there.
We used to do
Rainbow.
fishing, Barry would come down, we'd go fishing. But
That
it
way-
was, she started it when she
Yeah, I did start.
invited us down to see her friend's trailer.
I was just renting for a week, and then
Okay.
next thing you know, they wanted to rent,
Yeah.
and that started the big.
And there was one available, you know, that kind of thing. But then we moved on.
And then you went on to Bay Shore,
Mhm.
right? And
Barry helped them find that house.
Yeah, Barry
And-
found this house at Bay Shore.
uh-huh.
In fact, we had seen it years ago when all kinds of shrubbery was around it. You could hardly see it from
Wasn't cared for.
the public pier. And then it went up for sale.
And you seized that opportunity to grab it.
Yeah.
We went on our own ground.
Yeah,
That was the reason. We wanted to be on our own ground.
Yeah. And there were a lot of memories made at that
Yeah,
location
we
with
went back.
grandchildren.
A lot of storms.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went through a little bit of
All
everything.
the
A lot of good
grandkids
memories.
would come
Yeah.
out.
Mostly good memories.
Yeah.
You guys
Ride
would come
golf
down, we were
carts.
small, eat crabs.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody had a good
We had
time.
fun doing that.
So I vaguely remember the Pot Nets location, which
Yeah.
means I know that the other grandkids
Yeah.
don't know it.
No, I think he was still working then, and it was the kind of thing we would get there when we could,
Yeah.
like the weekend or something.
Yeah. And I just remember the pine trees along the driveway, and there were stepping stones or blocks there.
Yeah, I planted those pine trees.
And then I remember jumping from block to block to block, and then you walk up onto like this wooden, I don't know, pier maybe, and then walk up steps to another wooden deck, I think.
Well, you also remember the trail in the weeds?
Yes, we would golf cart.
There were snakes in there.
Yeah, that was at Bay Shore.
Yeah.
Now I remember at Pot Nets we would golf cart through the
It would do.
trails and
Yeah, you were allowed to drive carts and
Yeah.
bonnets.
Yeah.
They finally said that no more motorized ones, they all had to be electric.
Well, two more questions, and these are important ones. These are big ones. So how is the world today different from what it was like when you were a child?
Most thing I can think about is that the President of the United States, when I was a child, was respected. Today, there is no respect for your president. That's my feeling. Not that he's a good or bad president, but nobody has any respect for him. Even their own Republicans, in my opinion.
A lot of people today challenge the president
Yeah.
and challenge
That's what
the
it is,
politicians
yeah.
a lot more.
Nobody ever questioned it.
Yeah.
It started, probably it started in Nixon's days. It's disrespect because they impeached him.
Right. How do you feel, Grandma, about today's world versus when you were a kid?
Well, I think if you lived through, like the war that we did, lived through that, and the fear, that you will always remember that you had fear, because it was at one point scary because we didn't really know what was going to happen. And when you're a young child, you expect, what is all this? You can't quite cope and understand all of it.
Right. Last question. What is one thing you want people to remember most about you?
Boy, that's
It's
hard.
a tough question.
Well, I don't know.
Her eyebrows raised. She's got her eyebrows.
What would you want from?
I tried to do what was right. If it wasn't right, somebody would tell me, and I would listen.
Give me the question again.
What do you want people to remember most about you?
Oh, okay. You know, I've enjoyed, I didn't have any brothers and sisters.
All your art.
Yeah,
We are.
but I didn't have any brothers and sisters. And I went forward with that part of my life, and I was fortunate enough to have 3 children, which I thoroughly enjoyed that part of it because I didn't have that.
Yeah.
By myself all the time. It's not easy to be by yourself and grow up. And then I had the, good days, bad days, whatever they were, with my troops.
Yeah, but I think
But
your
I lost
artwork
Nadine.
says a lot about you.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
would-
She has-
that comes from.
Her name is pretty much all over the world,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
She is everywhere.
People buying paintings and taking them out to their countries.
The one thing that I take away from you guys is your persistency. Because you've come from nothing, and yet you've went through hard times, and life was not easy as a kid growing up, and you've built
what you have and what your family that you have now.
I can remember I was a teenager, we didn't have a telephone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unheard of today.
Yep. Yeah.
No
Everyone's got one.
telephone. I
And
didn't get a telephone until we got into Marshallton with my parents.
And so you didn't let hard things and bother you. You pushed through them, and you kept working for the things that you have now. And
Yeah, but I don't think, Joshua, I don't think it's something like you say, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Things seem to fall in your path.
right,
And when something falls in your path, as far as you have to cope with it, be it bad, good, whatever. If you're strong, then you cope with it. That's what my dad always used to say, be strong, be strong. And that's true, because some people shy away from disagreements, or they shy away from somebody doing something they don't like. I mean, I think that's called growing up, you know?
Yeah.
You gotta know how to listen to the other person maybe, and, don't make it have to be your way. That's important.
I always thought a real treat in my days was going down to Woodland Beach and crabbing along the roadway there. We throw these lines over. We did that a lot. That was long before we had anything.
Isn't
big
this,
ones, huh?
This is a picture of one of the porch down at the beach, isn't it? The flowers, yeah. That's part of it. I was
Those are pictures at
Yeah,
Bay Shore.
yes, I'm saying, we had flowers.
Well, I'm going to stop this, and okay, go for it.
Up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. Yes, it's Superman, strange visitor from another world, who came to Earth with powers and ability far beyond that of mortal man. Superman, who could change the course of mighty rivers, bend steel in his bare hands, and who, disguised as Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter, fights a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way.
Yay!
Superman.
Wow, you got through that whole,
That was good, Dad.
I had a hard time not laughing.